The Great Chamber of Apex Prime was the largest room ever built by any species in the galaxy. Its walls stretched so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. 12 massive thrones circled the central floor, each one carved from stone taken from the homeworld of the elder races. For 10,000 years, this chamber had decided the fate of civilizations today. It would decide the fate of humanity. Do-Yeon Park stood alone in the center of the floor. He was 42 years old, with gray appearing in his black hair. His diplomatic uniform was simple, compared to the robes worn by the alien representatives around him. He looked small in this place. That was the point. The chamber was designed to make visitors feel small, but Do-Yeon Park did not feel small. He felt angry. "The vote is complete," announced High Speaker Vorin from his throne. Vorin was a Tellan, a species that resembled tall, thin birds with silver feathers and cold black eyes. His voice echoed through the chamber like a judge reading a death sentence. "The Council has decided. The 3 human colony worlds in the disputed zone will be transferred to the Norvac Empire." The vote was unanimous, 12-0. Not a single species had supported humanity. Do-Yeon looked up at the thrones. The Norvik ambassador, a creature named Kess, with scales the color of dried blood, was smiling. His species had attacked human colonies without warning. They had killed thousands of innocent people, and now the council was rewarding them for it. "High Speaker," Do-Yeon said, keeping his voice calm, "the Unity Accord promises protection to all member species. We joined this council because you promised us safety. We gave you access to our technology. We shared our resources. We trusted you. We appreciate your contributions," Vorin replied. His tone suggested he did not appreciate them at all. "But humanity has been a member of this council for only 30 years. The Norvac have been members for 3,000 years. Surely you understand that their needs carry more weight than yours. Their needs." Do-Yeon stepped forward. "They attacked us. They murdered our people. How's that a need?" Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not from one throne, but from several. The sound bounced off the ancient walls and filled the room with mockery. Ambassador Kess leaned forward on his throne. His smile grew wider, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. "Listen to the human," he said. "So dramatic, so emotional. This is why your species will never matter. You are children playing at civilization. You stumbled into the stars by accident, and now you cry when the adults make decisions you do not like." Even Vorin's thin beak curved into what might have been amusement. Do-Yeon's hands tightened into fists at his sides. He thought of the colony worlds. He thought of the families living there. He thought of his own son, Tai-Ho, who was only 12 years old and watching this broadcast from Earth. "We came to you in good faith," Do-Yeon said. "We asked for nothing but fairness. We followed every rule. We respected every tradition. And this is how you treat us?" "We treat you as you deserve," said another voice. This one came from the Methrin throne. The Methrin were ancient beings made of living crystal, and they rarely spoke. When they did, everyone listened. "Humanity is young. Humanity is weak. You have no great fleet. You have no powerful weapons. You exist because we allow you to exist. Be grateful, human. Be grateful that we do not give the Norvek all your worlds." The chamber fell silent after that. Even the laughter stopped. The Methrin had spoken the truth that everyone else was thinking. Humanity was tolerated, not respected. They were guests in a galaxy that did not want them. Do-Yeon Park stood very still for a long moment. He looked at each throne, one by one. He saw no sympathy. He saw no regret. He saw only the cold certainty of beings who believed they would rule forever. Then he walked to the small table where Earth's sigil sat. It was a simple thing, just a blue and green disk representing their homeworld. It had been placed there 30 years ago, when humanity had been so proud to join the galactic community. Do-Yeon picked up the sigil. He held it in both hands and looked at it for a moment. Then he turned to face the thrones one final time. "I will not beg," he said. His voice was quiet now, but somehow it carried through the entire chamber. "I will not ask again for justice that you will never give. Instead, I will make you a promise. He lifted the sigil high, then placed it inside his coat. "Remember this day," Doyon continued. "Remember how you laughed? Remember how you called us children? Remember how you took our worlds and told us to be grateful? Because we will remember. Every human alive today will tell their children about this moment. And their children will tell their children. And one day, when you need us, when you cry out for help the way we cried out today, you will learn what humanity becomes when it is treated like nothing." High Speaker Voran's feathers ruffled slightly. For just a moment, something like uncertainty crossed his face. Then it was gone. "Is that a threat, Ambassador Park?" Doyon shook his head. "No, High Speaker. It is a promise. And humans always keep their promises." He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. No one spoke. No one laughed. For the first time in the entire session, the chamber was completely quiet. At the doorway, Doyon paused and looked back over his shoulder. "Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council," he said. "Effective immediately. Do not contact us. Do not visit our space. As far as humanity is concerned, this council no longer exists." Then he was gone. The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. For a long moment, no one in the chamber spoke. Then Ambassador Kess broke the silence with a harsh laugh. "Good riddance," he said. "Let the humans run back to their little planet. In 100 years, no one will even remember they existed." The other representatives nodded and murmured agreement. The incident would be forgotten by tomorrow. Humanity was too weak to matter, too primitive to be a threat. They were nothing. High Speaker Voran said nothing. He simply stared at the empty space where Doyon Park had stood, and for reasons he could not explain. He felt cold, far away, on a small blue planet called Earth. A 12-year-old boy named Taiho watched his father walk out of that chamber. He watched the aliens laugh. He watched his father's dignity and courage in the face of impossible. Cruelty in young Taiho made a promise of his own. Someday he would make them remember. Someday he would make them understand. Someday he would show the entire galaxy what humanity could become. He did not know how long it would take. He did not know how much it would cost. But he knew, with the absolute certainty that only children possess, that the day would come. And when it did, the galaxy would never laugh at humanity again. The galaxy forgot about Earth within a single generation. News channels stopped mentioning the small blue planet. Star maps removed human territory from their borders. Trade ships found new routes that avoided the Sol system entirely. To the elder races, humanity became a story parents told their children about what happens when a species reaches too far too fast. But while the galaxy forgot, Earth remembered. Doyon Park returned home a changed man. The diplomat who had believed in peaceful cooperation was gone. In his place stood someone harder, someone who understood that the galaxy only respected power. He gathered the leaders of every nation on Earth and spoke to them for 3 hours. When he finished, there were no more separate nations. There was only Earth. Humanity unified in a single year. Old borders disappeared. Old conflicts ended. Every resource, every mind, every hand turned toward a single goal. They called it the Promise. No one needed to explain what that meant. Taiho grew up during the early years of the Promise. He watched his father work himself to exhaustion, building alliances between former enemies, creating systems that allowed billions of people to cooperate as one. By the time Taiho was 20, his father was dead, worn out by the weight of his mission. But the work continued. Taiho joined the military. He rose through the ranks faster than anyone in history, not because of his father's name, but because he was simply better than everyone else. He trained harder. He studied more. He never forgot why he was fighting, and he was not alone. On Mars, a young woman named Hannah Choi sat in a small laboratory, staring at equations that no one else could understand. She was 25 years old, and every alien scientist in the galaxy had told her she was wasting her time. Faster-than-light travel was impossible, they said. The physics did not allow it. Humans should accept the slow, limited technology that the elder races had used for millennia. Hannah did not accept anything. She had been studying the standard, FTL drives used by council species for years. The technology was ancient, developed by a species that had gone extinct millions of years ago. No one alive truly understood how it worked. They just copied it and called themselves advanced. Hannah took it apart. She found the flaws. She discovered that the original designers had solved only part of the problem, and everyone since then had been too lazy or too afraid to look for a better solution. The night she solved the equation, she did not sleep. She built a prototype in her laboratory, a device no larger than a coffee cup. When she activated it, the device vanished and reappeared on the other side of the room. It had traveled faster than light, not just a little faster. 1,000 times faster. She called it the pulse drive. Hannah brought her discovery to the military council. General Minho Beek, the head of strategic defense, listened to her explanation with growing amazement. He was a stern man with a face that rarely showed emotion, but when Hannah finished, he smiled for the first time in years. "How fast?" he asked. "We can cross the galaxy in 3 days," Hannah replied. "Council ships need 6 months for the same journey?" Minho nodded slowly. "Build it. Build as many as you can. Tell no one outside this room." The shipyards began construction that same month. They built them underground, hidden beneath the surface of Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They used materials mined from asteroids, transported by crews who knew only their small part of the operation. Security was absolute. Not a single message left the Sol system that mentioned what they were building. 10 years passed. The shipyards produced their first warship, a vessel called the Dawn of Defiance. It was sleek and black, designed for both speed and destruction. Its weapons were based on technology that Hannah and her team had invented themselves, not copied from anyone else. When it flew for the first time, Tai-Ho was there to watch. He was 32 years old by then, captain with a reputation for brilliance in tactical exercises. He looked at the Dawn of Defiance and felt something he had not felt since childhood. "Hope? How many can we build?" he asked General Minho. "As many as we need," the general replied. "Time is the only limit." They built more. 20 ships. 5,100. Each one was better than the last, as engineers learned from every design and improved upon it. Training programs selected the best pilots from across Earth. Unikim, a woman with reflexes so fast that computers could barely track them, became the first to master the new vessels. She trained others, building a force of pilots who could outfly anything in the galaxy. Commander Jiho Esio joined the effort in the 20th year. He was not a pilot or an engineer. He was a strategist, a man who could look at a battle and see 100 moves ahead. He studied every war the council races had ever fought. He memorized their tactics, their weaknesses, their arrogance. He developed new strategies that no alien commander would expect. "They fight the same way they have for 10,000 years, Jiho told Tai-Ho one evening. "They believe their methods are perfect because they have never lost. They have never faced an enemy who thinks differently." "We think differently?" Tai-Ho asked. Jiho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We think like humans. We adapt. We surprise. We never fight the same way twice. When we meet them on the battlefield, they will not know what hit them." 40 years after Earth left the Council, Admiral Tai-Ho Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Horizon's Wrath and looked out at his fleet. 1,000 warships hung in the darkness of space, each one crewed by men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. They were ready. Lieutenant Yoonji Han, the communications officer, approached him with a report. She was young, only 24, born long after the humiliation at Apex Prime. But she knew the story. Everyone did. "Admiral," she said, "long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in Council space. Large fleet movements. Distress signals from multiple systems." Tai-Ho turned to look at her. "What kind of distress signals?" "They're under attack, sir. Something called the Syndicate. We have been monitoring their communications for weeks. The Council is losing." Tai-Ho looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, the beings who had laughed at humanity were dying. The galaxy that had abandoned them was burning. He should have felt satisfaction. He should have felt vindication. Instead, he felt only sadness. Not for the Council, but for what humanity had been forced to become. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "Inform me of any changes." "Yes, Admiral." Yunji left the bridge. Tai-Ho remained at the window, watching his fleet. They had waited 50 years for this moment. They had sacrificed everything, given up entire generations to build this force. Now the question was simple. What would they do with it? He thought of his father walking out of that chamber with dignity intact. He thought of the promise they had made. He thought of what humanity was supposed to become. Not conquerors, but something better. The answer would come soon. He could feel it. The galaxy was about to remember that Earth still existed, and this time, they would never forget again. The Syndicate came from the darkness between galaxies. They were not a single species, but a collection of outcasts, exiles, and criminals from 100 different worlds. For centuries, they had hidden in the empty spaces where no one bothered to look. They had grown strong while the Council grew weak. And now, under the command of a warlord named Dreth, they had decided to take everything. The first attack came without warning. A Tellan colony world called Sereth Prime had 3 million inhabitants and a small defense fleet of 20 ships. The Syndicate arrived with 200. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, Sereth Prime was burning, and not a single defender remained alive. High Speaker Vorin received the news in his private chambers on Apex Prime. He stared at the report for a long time, trying to understand what he was reading. Attacks on Council territory were supposed to be impossible. The elder races had maintained peace for 10,000 years. No one would dare challenge them, but someone had dared, and they were winning. The attacks continued. One world after another fell to the Syndicate fleet. They moved with terrible speed, striking before reinforcements could arrive and vanishing before counterattacks could be organized. Warlord Drev seemed to know exactly where Council defenses were weakest. His strategy was perfect, his execution flawless. The Norvak Empire, once the most aggressive military power in the Council, tried to stop him. They sent their grand fleet, 300 of their finest warships. To intercept the Syndicate at a system called Varus Prime, Ambassador Kess himself traveled with the fleet. Confident that his species would crush these upstarts and restore order to the galaxy, the battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, the Norvik Grand Fleet no longer existed. Ambassador Kess escaped on a small shuttle. Watching through the rear window as his ships burned, he saw Warlord Dreth's flagship, a massive vessel covered in the symbols of conquered peoples, moving through the wreckage. He saw escape pods being targeted and destroyed. He saw mercy being denied. For the first time in his long life, Kess understood what it felt like to be weak. He fled to Apex Prime, where the remaining Council leaders had gathered. The great chamber that had once echoed with confidence and laughter was now filled with fear. Representatives from a dozen species argued about what to do, their voices high with panic. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to run. High Speaker Vorin stood on his throne and called for silence. When the noise finally stopped, he looked out at the assembly with eyes that had aged decades in the past few months. "We have sent messengers to every allied system," he said. "We have called in every debt and favor accumulated over 10,000 years. The response has been disappointing. Many of our allies have already fallen. Others refuse to send ships, preferring to defend their own borders. We are alone." "Then we must surrender," said the Methrin representative. The Crystal Bean's voice was no longer confident. It was tired. "We cannot win. We must save what we can. Surrender to Dreth." Kess shouted. He had not cleaned the smoke and blood from his scales. He looked like a creature from a nightmare. He does not take prisoners. He does not make deals. He destroys everything he touches. Surrender means death. Then what do you suggest? Vorin asked. Kess was silent. He had no answer. None of them did. The chamber fell quiet. For a long moment, no one spoke. They could hear faintly the sound of alarm klaxons from distant parts of the station. Another attack? Somewhere in Council space? Another world dying. Then Vorin did something that surprised everyone. including himself. He thought of Earth. 50 years had passed since the humans had walked out of this chamber. 50 years since Do-Yeon Park had made his promise. Vorin had dismissed them as irrelevant, a minor species throwing a tantrum. He had assumed they would collapse within a generation, or come crawling back to beg for readmission to the council. They had done neither. In fact, no one had heard from Earth at all. Their space was closed. Their borders were sealed. They had simply vanished. There is one possibility we have not considered, Vorin said slowly. The other representatives looked at him with confusion. What possibility could remain? They had tried everything, humans, Vorin continued. We could ask the humans for help. Silence. Then laughter, bitter and hollow. The humans, Kess said. The species we expelled from this council? The species we took 3 worlds from. The species I personally called children. You think they would help us? They might, Vorin replied. They were always strange. They spoke of concepts like forgiveness and compassion. Perhaps they still believe in such things. And if they do not... Vorin spread his wings slightly, the Tellan equivalent of a shrug. Then we are no worse than we are now. Dead with pride, or dead without it, the result is the same, no one argued. They had nothing left to lose. Vorin returned to his chambers and composed a message. He spent hours on it, choosing every word with care. He did not demand or command. He did not threaten or bargain. For the first time in his life, he simply asked, "To the people of Earth," the message began. 50 years ago, we wronged you. We laughed at your pain. We took your worlds. We called you insignificant. We were wrong. Today, we face an enemy we cannot defeat. Our worlds are burning. Our people are dying. We have no right to ask for your help, but we have no one else to ask. If there is any mercy in your hearts, any willingness to forgive what cannot be undone, we beg you to remember that we are not all like those who hurt you. There are children in our cities. There are families who never voted against you. They do not deserve to die for our mistakes. Please help us. He sent the message and waited, far away in the Sol system. Lieutenant Yoon-ji-han received the transmission on the bridge of the Horizon's Wrath. She read it 3 times to make sure. She understood. Then she brought it to Admiral Tai-ho Park. Tai-ho read the message in silence. His face showed no emotion. When he finished, he handed the tablet back to Yoongi and walked to the observation window. Outside, his fleet waited. 1,000 warships, built by 50 years of sacrifice and determination. 1,000 vessels crewed by men and women who had been raised on stories of humiliation and betrayal. 1,000 reasons to let the council burn. But Tai-ho was not thinking about revenge. He was thinking about his father and about the kind of people humans were supposed to be. Call a meeting of all senior commanders, he said finally. 1 hour. Yes, Admiral. What shall I tell them? Tai-ho looked at the stars, at the distant points of light where the galaxy was dying. Tell them, he said, that humanity has a decision to make. The senior commanders gathered in the war room of the Horizon's Wrath. There were 12 of them, representing every branch of Earth's military. They sat around a circular table, their faces lit by holographic displays showing the current state of council space. Most of it was red, indicating syndicate control. Admiral Tai-ho Park stood at the head of the table. Beside him were General Min-ho Beek, Captain Yoona Kim, Commander Ji-ho Seo, and Dr. Hannah Choi. They had built this fleet together. Now they would decide what to do with it. You have all seen the message from High Speaker Vorin, Tai-ho began. The council is asking for our help. I want your honest opinions. General Min-ho spoke first. He was the oldest person in the room, with white hair and a face carved from stone. 50 years ago, they took our worlds and laughed. Now they beg. There is justice in letting them suffer what they made us suffer. Several commanders nodded in agreement. The anger was still fresh even after half a century. Stories of the humiliation had been passed down through generations. Every person in this room knew someone who had lost family on the 3 colony worlds. There's also danger, Commander Ji-ho added. He pulled up tactical projections on the display. The Syndicate is not going to stop at Council Space. Once they control the center of the galaxy, they will expand outward. Within 20 years, they will reach our borders. If we wait until then, we will be fighting alone against an enemy that controls most of known space. So we fight now when we have allies, Captain Yuna asked. Even if those allies betrayed us? The Council cannot be trusted, General Minho said firmly. If we save them, they will turn on us the moment the threat is gone. They will take our technology, copy our ships, and find new ways to push us down. That is who they are, maybe Taiho said. Or maybe this is our chance to change who they are, and who we are. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at the Admiral. Taiho walked to the display and looked at the burning worlds. The refugee fleets, the distress signals that flickered and died as he watched. My father walked out of that chamber 50 years ago. He made a promise that humanity would show the galaxy what we could become. I always thought that meant we would become powerful, and we have. But is that all? He turned to face his commanders. We built this fleet because we were afraid. We trained for war because we expected war. We closed our borders because we trusted no one. And we were right to do all of that. But my father also taught me something else. He taught me that strength without compassion is just another form of weakness. Dr. Hannah Choi spoke for the first time. She rarely attended military meetings, but Taiho had asked her to be here. I spent my whole life trying to make us stronger, she said. I built the pulse drive because I wanted humanity to have power that no one could take away. But power means nothing if we become the same as those who hurt us. If we let billions die when we could save them, we lose something that technology cannot replace. Captain Yuna nodded slowly. She was the best pilot in the fleet, a warrior who had trained for this moment her entire life. I want to fight, she said. But I want to fight for the right reasons. Saving innocent people is a right reason. Revenge is not. One by one, the other commanders spoke. Some wanted to let the council burn. Others agreed with Taiho. In the end, the vote was close. But the decision was clear. Humanity would answer the call. The fleet moved to the border of council space within hours. The pulse drive allowed them to travel distances that would take other ships months. When they emerged from faster-than-light travel, they found a galaxy in chaos. Refugee ships filled the space between stars. Distress signals came from every direction. The wreckage of destroyed fleets drifted in silent clouds. This was what remained of the Great Galactic Council, reduced to desperation and ruin. Admiral Taiho ordered his communications officer to open a channel on all frequencies. His voice would reach every ship in the sector, Council and Syndicate alike. This is Admiral Taiho Park of the Earth United Fleet, he said. His voice was calm and steady, carrying across the void. 50 years ago, you called us children. You called us insignificant. You took our worlds and laughed when we wept. On the refugee ships, survivors stopped what they were doing and listened. On the Syndicate vessels, commanders looked up in confusion. No one had expected this. Today we return, Taiho continued. Not because we forgive you. Not because we need you. We return because we are human, and humans protect even those who wronged them. We return because there are children on your worlds who never hurt anyone. We return because our strength means nothing if we use it only for ourselves. 1,000 warships moved into formation behind the horizon's wrath. Their hulls were black and sleek. Their weapons powered and ready. They were beautiful and terrifying, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. To the Syndicate forces in this sector, Taiho said, his voice growing harder, you have 1 hour to withdraw. Take your ships and leave Council space. This is your only warning. If you remain, you will face us. And I promise you, on my father's memory, you do not want to face us. The message ended. Silence fell across the sector. On Apex Prime, High Speaker Vorin watched the transmission with tears streaming down his silver feathers. He had not believed the humans would come. He had not believed anyone would come. But there they were. 1,000 ships where there had been only darkness before. Ambassador Kess stood beside him, his scales pale with shock. Impossible, he whispered. They were nothing. They were primitives. How did they build such a fleet? They were never nothing, Vorin replied quietly. We simply refused to see what they were. On the bridge of the Horizon's Wrath, Lieutenant Yoon Han reported incoming transmissions. Admiral, the Syndicate is responding. They are not withdrawing. Warlord Dreth is sending a message. Screen flickered, and Dreth appeared. He was massive, a creature of metal and flesh combined, his body covered in the trophies of conquered enemies. His eyes burned with arrogance and cruelty. Humans, he said, his voice like grinding stone. I have heard of you. A small species from a small world. You built some pretty ships, and now you think you can threaten me? I have crushed empires that existed before your species learned to walk upright. Run home, little humans. This is not your war. Taiho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. 1 hour, Warlord. That is all you have. He cut the transmission. Captain Yuna stepped forward, her eyes bright with anticipation. He is not going to run, Admiral. No, Taiho agreed. He is not good. Yuna turned and walked toward the hangar. She had been waiting 50 years for this moment. Then let us show him what happens when you underestimate humanity. The countdown began. The hour passed. Warlord Dreth did not withdraw. Instead, he gathered every ship he could find. 3,000 Syndicate vessels from across the conquered sectors, and positioned them around Apex Prime. If the humans wanted to fight, he would give them a massacre. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror, watching the tactical display with contempt. 1,000 human ships against his 3,000. The mathematics were simple. The humans would die screaming, and then nothing would stand between him and total control of the galaxy. They are fools, he told his commanders. They hid in their little system for 50 years, and now they emerge to face us. Their arrogance will be their end, his commanders agreed, as they always did. No one disagreed with Warlord Tret. At the edge of the sector, Admiral Taiho Park gave the order to advance. The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation, each ship maintaining exact distance from its neighbors. They did not rush. They did not hesitate. They approached with the calm confidence of predators who knew their prey. Remember your training, Captain, Yuna broadcast to her pilots. Trust your instincts. Trust your wingmates. And remember why we are here. The first shots came from the Syndicate fleet. Massive energy beams lanced across space, aimed at the approaching human vessels. They were the same weapons that had destroyed the Norvat Grand Fleet. The same weapons that had burned 100 worlds. They hit nothing. The human ships vanished a fraction of a second before impact, using micro-jumps through the pulse drive to relocate across the battlefield. They reappeared behind the Syndicate line and opened fire. Human weapons were different. They were not copied from ancient designs. They were new, invented by scientists who refused to accept limitations. Beams of focused energy cut through Syndicate shields like they were not there. Missiles that moved faster than any sensor could track struck vulnerable points with devastating precision. 12. Syndicate ships exploded in the first 30 seconds. On the Conqueror, Warlord Dreth watched in disbelief. What is this? He demanded. How are they moving like that? No one could answer. They had never seen anything like it. The human fleet was everywhere and nowhere, striking from impossible angles, refusing to stay still long enough to be targeted. Every tactic the Syndicate tried failed. Every formation they adopted was countered before it could form. Commander, Jiho Essio sat in the tactical center of the Horizon's Wrath, watching the battle unfold exactly as he had planned. He had spent 20 years studying Syndicate strategy. He knew how they would respond to every possible situation, and he had developed counters for all of them. Strike Group 7, adjust heading by 30 degrees, he ordered. Strike Group 12, prepare for flanking maneuver on my mark. The human fleet responded instantly, moving with coordination that the Syndicate could not match. Each captain knew their role. Each pilot understood the larger pattern. They fought not as individual ships, but as a single organism, 1,000 pieces moving in perfect harmony. Captain Yuna led the Vanguard Squadron, flying directly into the heart of the Syndicate formation. Her ship twisted and spun through enemy fire, destroying targets with almost casual precision. Behind her, 50 pilots followed her every move, cutting a path of destruction through the enemy fleet. "There," Una called out. "The Conqueror. I see their flagship." She dove toward it, weaving through debris and weapons fire. 2 Syndicate cruisers moved to intercept her, but she was too fast. She slipped between them, and they destroyed each other, trying to hit her. The battle raged for 3 hours. 3 hours of chaos and fire and destruction. 3 hours of human skill against Syndicate numbers. 3 hours of everything humanity had built, being tested against the cruelty of the galaxy. At the end of those 3 hours, 2,000 Syndicate ships were burning wreckage. The rest were fleeing in every direction, abandoning their warlord, abandoning their conquest, abandoning everything they had fought for. Warlord Dreth stood alone on the bridge of the Conqueror. His crew was dead. His fleet was destroyed. His dreams of galactic domination had turned to ash. He stared at the tactical display, watching the human flagship approaching. And for the first time in his life, he felt fear. The Horizon's Wrath appeared beside the Conqueror like a ghost. Admiral Taiho Park stood on his bridge, looking at the warlord through the viewscreen. "You picked the wrong galaxy to conquer," Taiho said. Dreth tried to respond, tried to summon some final defiance, but no words came. There was nothing left to say. Human Marines boarded the Conqueror and took Dreth prisoner. He would face justice for his crimes, not execution, but trial. Humanity did not become monsters to defeat monsters in the aftermath of the battle. High Speaker Vorin traveled to the Horizon's Wrath to meet Admiral Taiho Park in person. He was old now, his feathers gray and thin, his body worn by months of fear and desperation, but he stood straight as he faced the human admiral. "You saved us," Vorin said. "You saved everyone. I do not have words to express what that means." "Words are not necessary," Taiho replied. "I must offer you something. A seat on the council, leadership of the council. Whatever you want, it is yours." Taiho shook his head. "We did not come back for power, High Speaker. We came back to show you who we are. Humanity remembers every wound. We forgive when we choose to, and we protect everyone, even those who do not deserve it." He paused and looked out the window at the stars. 800 human ships remained of the original 1,000. 200 had been lost in the battle, along with thousands of brave men and women. They had paid a terrible price to save people who had laughed at them. "But we never forget," Taiho continued. "Earth will not rejoin the council. We will be something else. We will watch. We will guard. And if darkness rises again, we will return." Vorin bowed his head. He understood. This was not rejection. It was transformation. Humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Protectors who asked for nothing. Guardians who answered to no one. "May I ask one more thing?" Vorin said. "Ask. Ambassador Kess wishes to speak with you. He wants to apologize for what he said 50 years ago. Will you see him?" Taiho considered for a moment. Then he nodded. Kess entered the room looking nothing like the proud creature who had once mocked humanity. His scales were dull, his posture bent, his eyes filled with shame. He stood before Admiral Taiho Park and struggled to find words. "I called you children," Kess finally said. "I was the child. I knew nothing of honor, or courage, or sacrifice. I knew nothing of what makes a species great. I spent 50 years believing I was superior to you, and now I see that I was never worthy to stand in the same room as you." Taiho looked at him for a long time. He saw a broken creature, humiliated by history, crushed by the weight of his own cruelty. He could have said anything. He could have returned every insult, every mockery, every wound. Instead, he stepped forward and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Learn from this," Taiho said. "Become better. That is the only apology that matters." Kess took his hand. His grip was weak, trembling, but it was real. In that moment, something changed between their species. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something new. The human fleet departed the next day. They returned to Earth, to their hidden shipyards and their quiet world. The galaxy watched them go with something it had never felt before when thinking about humans. Respect Captain Unikim stood on the observation deck of the Horizons. Wrath as they entered the Sol system. She had lost friends in the battle. She had seen things that would haunt her forever. But she had also seen humanity rise to become something extraordinary. Was it worth it? Lieutenant Yunji-han asked, standing beside her. All those years of preparation, all those sacrifices, was it worth it? Yuna thought about the question. She thought about the refugee ships they had saved, children who would grow up in freedom instead of slavery, the worlds that would rebuild instead of burn. Yes, she said finally. It was worth it. On Earth, the news of the victory spread across the planet. People celebrated in the streets, strangers embracing strangers. Tears of joy mixing with tears of sorrow for those who had not returned. They had done what their grandparents had dreamed of. They had shown the galaxy what humanity could be. Admiral Taiho Park did not join the celebrations. He stood alone in his quarters, looking at an old photograph of his father. Doyen Park smiled back at him, frozen in a moment from a simpler time. Kept the promise, father, Taiho whispered. We made them remember. He set the photograph down and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was healing. Somewhere out there, new challenges were forming. Humanity would be ready. They would always be ready, because humans never forgot. And they never stopped protecting those who needed protection, even those who had never deserved it.